Okay, greetings everybody. My apologies for being late, but we're going to hope we can make it through this. I've got some computer issues going on, it seems. Keep shutting down on me. We're going to go as long as we can and see how it works out. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody for your support. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There is a couple PayPal links down in the details section in case anybody wants to share some love. And of course, the StreamYard link is in the chat section there for anybody who wants to join the panel. In regards to the probated estate, tonight we're going to start out with 1 Corinthians 12:27. It says, "Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it." Each one of you is a part of it. Each one of you is a part of the estate. And you are living as a Christ being in Eucharist. The message of 1 Corinthians 12:27. And then we're going to hit Proverbs 11:15. Proverbs 11:15. He that is surety for a stranger shall smart for it, and he that hateth suretyship is sure. That's what we're talking about with the selective service and the enumeration at birth and the SS5 and all them national and state documentations that say you're a citizen and a resident. You're taking upon a suretyship for a person, and that person is a stranger to you. That's a person created by the state for a state vital statistics jurisdiction. It's the documentation only. So tonight, I figured it'd be a good idea to go over the selective service video that I've already done, and maybe I can do some breaking down on that. So we're going to get into it here and see how this goes. Because if you remember, folks, that selective service number, when you do the lookup on that, they ask you for the Social Security.
Good afternoon, everybody.
They ask you for the social with no dashes. That social with no dashes is the obligor.
Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I want to get on and talk to everybody about the selective service and what it is, how it works in relations to the welfare program and this and that. And it's only going to be brief, I think, because this is the first time I've looked at this selective service registration code itself. And so I've never actually looked at it in depth. So I might find some stuff here that might relate to other information I've already researched or correlate with research that I should be doing as well. So we're going to take a look at that.
And like I said, that when I looked up the selective service number, they told me specifically to enter in the Social Security number with no dashes. And that was correlating to this financial index document I got from the local courthouse, where they list the obligor as the Social Security number with no dashes. And that Social Security number with no dashes in the courts, as I reflect back on it, the thought is that it's a selective service number. So on the other side of the counter, they're selecting the service that they're going to put you under. It's kind of like the forum shopping. And so they get to select the service to draft an order because they take your statement as a promise, as if though you're the one offering to contract and making a promise.
Okay. This is
And this is on the basis of the equity maxim. Equity is not complete an imperfect gift. Equity does not complete an imperfect gift. It can't be perfected. Throw it away.
obviously, we're looking at 34 CFR 668.37 selective service registration. Now, when we look at this, we see it's the education department and it's regulations of the offices of offices. So it is an official office of a military service. That's where the offices sit. It's a provisional government by a military service and operates under martial law, and the political offices thereunder are all offices of the same thing, whether it be an office of the Department of Education, Homeland Security, administration, accountability, management and budget, whatever. It's still military, every last bit of it.
And I remind you, Article 10 of the Lieber Code tells us that martial law chiefly affects the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes. This is for all of these departments and operations and programs and administrations and agencies and all that. Article 10 of the Lieber Code, look it up. That's for the Army, its use, its safety, and the safety of its operations. Specifically,
is military. Office of Post-Secondary. Post. Office of.
and remember, that's where we looked at those codes, a couple of those codes last night. Post-secondary education. It all starts out at the early access intervention. Early access intervention for infants and toddlers up to 3 years old. Yet it's regulated by the Department of Education, wherein those children don't go to the public schools until they're about 5 years old. Think about these inconsistencies, folks.
Post-secondary education. It's not primary education of the post. Get it? But it's Office of Post-Secondary Education, Department of Education. This is all public. It's not private education of posting, of post. What is a...
See, they didn't teach you one thing about what the posting is all about. Everything you post in every venue is an accounting of events. They describe events in all cases.
Post. And like I've said before, everywhere you go, you're posting shit to somebody's record. And you've only got a secondary education to a primary record. Okay, so let's take a look at it. A, to be or not to be. That is the question. It says selective.
Let me know if I turn that
Okay.
down too much.
Once you elect to be part of the service, then you get a selection. As being enrolled in education, education, mom and dad elected to put you up for selective service registration. Boys, to be eligible to receive Title IV and higher education program funds, a male student who is subject to registration with selective service must register with selective service.
So what is a male student? Well, going by the higher education, that's high school, that's 14 years age.
Okay. That tells us males or females benefit from the Title IV-D and the higher education program funds. So ladies, I want to ask you, just like food stamps and everything, why are you not getting education free? Is it because they're telling you, well, it's going to cost you this, this, and this, when in fact a higher education program funds it through welfare, which is for the benefit of mothers and children? And now,
see, they're supposed to be providing an education of a high enough degree that would allow people to get out of this system that they're enslaved to. But of course, that would be redundant to their purpose. They want to keep you in this slave system so that they can provide these welfare programs that are nothing but schemes of insurance underwriting risks, where they transfer that risk for every document you sign.
never once mentions the dad, except in taking charge over a child of which either parent objects. So if a male student objects, and the only reason they would have this for moms and children is if the male student wasn't around. So I want everybody to think about this, because it's still a selective service. You always have the ability to back out and say, I'm sorry, I made a bad choice. I found a better way. I found a better path. I found a higher education for myself, so my woman and my children wouldn't have to depend on yours through a secondary education program.
And this goes with child support too. You know, I've got people out there that claim that I ripped off the government or whatever and didn't support my child because I didn't pay child support, and that's not so. What I did was I beat child support on the fact that I pay child support directly to my child. I don't need a third-party intervener to tell me I'm doing a good job or what my qualifications of a good job are. It's none of their business. Period. It's a Title IV-D contract that plays on a legal name. Again, like I showed in the financial index, the obligor is identified by a number, not the name. It's only attached to a name, and that name can be styled in different ways, but attached with that obligor number and a PIN number, they go straight through.
Which is still, that's what their higher education is. It's still a secondary program. Think about this, people. All these creditors, accountants, attorneys, bankers, a lot of this information that we're putting out, they have never heard of, even though they went to 2, 4, 6, 8 years of college. I guarantee you that doctor that took a Hippocratical oath, I can completely prove he is incompetent on the stand by questioning an English major, and why such an idiot who professes that he understands English would take an oath to God and to Apollo and the Greek gods. Yeah, please. Just set it on the stove. Comprehend that, folks. You want to put me to a competency test? Why did that doctor take a Hippocratic oath to God, Apollo and the Greek gods? No, not the one that's questioning me about my competency, but I'm questioning my mom's competency and this whole fucking record and its ability to even question my competency first. Because as far as I know, that's tampering with a witness.
And that's what I follow. I'm a witness to the word of God. And you're not going to add one jot nor one tittle, nor take away from it.
An informant unlawfully converting and instrumentalizing a deceptive language. Pure and simple. So it goes on to say, a male student does not have to register with the Selective Service if the student is below age of 18.
Below age of 18. How far below? Well, again, it's high school. At the age of 14, you're allowed to go ahead and drop out of high school. So if you continue on in high school, that's voluntary. And like I said, you become a voluntary male student subject to selective service because mom is taking upon Title IV contract medical and higher education assistance program funds.
Or was born before January 1st, 1960. I think they need to update that. See?
Yeah, if you were born before 1960, you'd be 62, 63 years old by now. You can't sign up for selective service anymore. You're up on retirement age from civilian age or from civilian service. You would have had to have signed up for a selective service a long time ago.
This is one of those points that I like to make because it shows an inconsistency on the record. Think about this, guys. If somebody's born before January 1st, 1960, that means that motherfucker got to be at least 73 years old at this point in time. We are talking.
Yeah, and I misspoke there. It's 63, but
talking about now time in its correct, accurate correlation. Okay? Plain language. In plain language, this is aired. Is enrolled in an officer procurement program. The curriculum. Oops.
And that's that public education system, like I said. The early access intervention for the public education system curriculum of personnel, bringing up the children to be personnel. So they go by personnel guidelines, personnel curriculum, personnel policy, personnel codes, personnel laws. It's all persons.
Officer procurement program. Did you enroll your children in an officer procurement program, the curriculum of which has been approved by the Secretary of Defense after you registered their birth with the Secretary of Defense through the Department of Defense birth registration, which is only an agreement between the federal government and an official of the state to assign a social security number to a newborn child who has already proven that they are taking charge over of a child over parents at all, because neither parent has made an objection first, including the mom, the informant.
And they have a limited list of places where at the following institutions there. But the law is uniform throughout all jurisdictions. So this runs down through your public education system to help pass on that curriculum. And even though you're not enrolled in an officer procurement program, you've enrolled them in a similar program, training them for the performance of functions of public office. bringing them up in the world of a resident, teaching them yourself that they're a resident of the community, that they're a United States citizen. This is how you write your name and address. And then you teach them how to write a legal name as a contract officer in a bonded national address format as a receiver of service. Receiver of process of service as a trustee.
The title, Secretary of Defense Act. This tells you where the Virginia Military Institute, Lexington, Virginia. Norwich University. That's a college, North Georgia College. That's the title. Same situation. These are granted organizations. These are land grants. These are land grant colleges. This is a land grant institution.
Look up land grant college in your state. You're going to find at least 1, 2, 3, 4. There's going to be 1 to several of them. Look up land grant banks too.
Possession, entry, and ejection from lands is a military operation. Is a commissioned officer of the Public Health Service. Telling you, when you get that assigned Social Security number to the newborn child, you just entered them into a commissioned office of a military public health service. You elected as mom and dad to do so. And then you turned around and continued that with enrollment for curriculum to train him for public procurement. Or a member of the reserve of the Public Health Service. Again, telling you it's a military operation who is on active duty. Mom and dad, are you on active duty?
Principal place of business, principal place of residence. A duty post. It's an extension of a military post. All post offices are inland marine installations. Contact the headquarters of the Marine Corps and ask them.
Mom, were you on active duty when you were bearing labor pains, doing his good works? After one of his children was founded in your kiln, your womb, and you were entrusted with that product of life for 9 months? Dad, did you see that? Were you co-trustee in that? Being cast upon the earth and not being part of the military. They tampered with witnesses. All you got to do is say so. They can't prove otherwise. None of their documents are scriptural.
None.
None. Not one. None. When the secretary processes a male student's FAFSA, the secretary determines whether the student is registered with the Selective Service under a data match with the Selective Service.
And data elements are important.
Everything's entered into the Selective Service records, moms and dads.
Entered. Import.
Moms who bear children to females, little girls. Even though you're not in the military, dad's not there. And it's assumed that dad is lost at sea. and the state is going to help take care of the welfare of mom and the child. If mom and dad simply step up, say no thanks, that's not the way it is, and that's not the way it can be, because we are not with the Selective Service ourselves, then I'm sorry. We can't just, you can't just sign us up. See, by signing up for that welfare, that SS5,
It placates that you have to do something in order to receive a benefit. And that's just not so. If you have to do something to receive a benefit, then you're no longer involved in the trust as a benefactor, but rather as a contract officer who has to give something in exchange. The benefactor takes benefit of a simple gift.
application at the age of 18, guys and ladies, you're stating that you're part of the military, when that's not so. Moms and dads, when you have children and you enter them in that birth registration, you're saying you're part of the military. And if that's not so, that record can't be made. It's a false data entry. Under the data match, Selective Service reports to the secretary whether its records indicate that a student is registered. That's all it does. It doesn't prove anything. It only indicates.
And again, that individual's name and number identify the record. And that is all, that's the only place the indication can be. That's the only place it can exist. It cannot jump off that paper and indicate that the living soul is a student, is a male student. Those are ad hominems, again, in noun form. I am not a noun. I am a verb.
It's indicative. It is not proof. It is evidence in, on, and for the record that certain transfers and transactions have been committed, but the information is never verified. Never. If it were, they would find that it's false.
They would find that all of that fiat documentation under military fiat didn't have a financial statement of intent handwritten and signed.
This is why I pose that all you got to do is correct the record. That the student is registered and the secretary reports the results of the data match, not the actual scrutiny of a record, but just the results of what's indicative to the student and the institution the student is attending. If the Selective Service does not confirm through the data match that the student is registered, the student can establish that he is registered, is not, or was not required to be registered.
Was not required to be registered. So if you're a student taking upon the benefit of higher education, then it would only be because you've been listed as a citizen, a United States citizen, or a resident, because immigrants get the same benefit and they're not required to sign up for Selective Service.
Correction of the records. I'm sorry. As I find in the records, mom and dad, the informant, mom as an informant couldn't be part of the military. Somebody tampered with a witness. Fact on the record. Has registered since the submission of FAFSA, meets the conditions of paragraph D of this section, which says an institution may determine that a student who was required to, but did not register with Selective, is not ineligible to receive Title IV and higher education assistance for that reason. Is not ineligible. In other words, they're admitting that you are eligible, guys, to receive Title IV and higher education assistance. For that reason. If the student can demonstrate by submitting clear and unambiguous evidence to the institution that he was unable to present himself for registration for reasons beyond his control. It's beyond my control. Isaiah 44, verse 5 says that I shall call myself by the name of Jacob and subscribe by my hand in the surname of Israel. Such as hospitalization, incarceration, or institutionalization, or he is over 26, and when he was between 18 and 26 and were required to register, he did not knowingly and willfully fail to register with the Selective Service, or what they leave out here is he did not knowingly and willingly register with the Selective Service despite not being eligible. He served as a member of one of the U.S. Armed Forces on active duty and received a DD-214 certificate of release of discharge or release or discharge from active duty.
Release or discharge. So when you continue on in the civilian service, it is a release. You have released your personal services to do paperwork. No longer in the field, but behind the desk.
Certificate of release or discharge. You have to complete and qualify its use. This is telling you it can be used for a release. In other words, you release your services from the military to the civil duties, civil areas, civil jurisdiction, civil services. So now you're done with the military service and you're going to release your personal services to the civil side of the record. Or discharge from active duty, whereupon you go upon your own private way.
Okay, greetings everybody. I want to take a real quick break to remind everybody, please hit the like, share, and subscribe button. I appreciate everybody's support. Welcome to MW, Michael Keith to St. Martin, Russ Combs, Ego Checker. We got the Freak in the house, Special K, Jack Off Jack. Greetings everybody. Please remember there's a PayPal link down in the chat or in the details section for anybody who wants to share some love. I'm going to drop the StreamYard link for anybody who wants to join panel. And one of the things I want to point out here is that's the importance of this entire fiat system is the discharge. If it's not discharged, then it sits there in a delinquent status. So that's all we're trying to do is correct that delinquency. And that's a matter of correcting the records that everything should be discharged in full acquittance so that no person shall be held liable in any court. And that's merely bringing equity, bringing peace, bringing love. If you want to receive such things, you've got to bring them. So instead of going forth and making accusations and stuff, just make recognition of the certain inconsistencies and the fact that they're so innumerous that it creates a distinct impossibility for variances from categorical pre-treatment standards that are fundamentally different in nature. It goes against your nature as a peaceful man to sign up for a war. Particularly if America is not at war on her homeland. Why would you go somewhere else and fight someone else's battles in such a way, particularly when you know it's corporate? So anyway, we're going to get back to it. About halfway through.
They do know this stuff. You just have to be able to express it. Hey, I made a mistake. I made an act. I had all these accidents, continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions, placing public liability where I never expected or intended as the insured. See, when I took up the SS5 and became insured and started placing those liabilities on the record through continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions of believing that I was required to, when in fact I wasn't and was not even eligible to.
See, they want your signature, name and signature on that contract with the name and address, implying that you're the contracting officer. But again, if you're allowed to give a number in lieu of a name and address, then why didn't people teach us that? Instead, they taught us in school to write the name in the legal sense and sign it, and then write the name and address in the national format as a contracting officer. Never even taught you how to write your name in concise English. They never did that. Not for me.
I repent. I'm sorry. I did not mean to cause all this trouble. But now that I know of it and I've given notice, it's everybody's duty, because you're the ones on the civil or military side in the service still that have an active duty and have not been released or discharged from that active duty, showing military service with other than the reserve forces and National Guard. All you got to do is flip the script on them, guys. They tell you. This is very plain language. For the purpose of paragraph D21 or D2I of this section, an institution may consider that a student did not knowingly and willingly fail to register. They can also consider that he did not knowingly and willingly register under eligibility. He didn't realize that he wasn't eligible and therefore did register, and he didn't mean to, didn't realize it. Now that he realizes it, the record must be retracted, for the record must reflect accurately. In that, I apologize for my mistakes. I repent. And as a redeemer, a stranger and sojourner with our Father which art in heaven, in all of the lands of my possession, I shall grant a redemption. And that's what I'm doing. That's all I wish. It's my.
And like I said before, redemption is just a matter of buying back what you've sold off. That's the very definition of redemption, to buy back a debt that somebody sold off.
I wish, because it's his will. The student submits to the institution an advisory opinion from the selective service system that does not dispute the student's claim that he did not knowingly and willingly or willfully fail to register. And this here is a statement in our verse stating the same thing, but that I registered, but I did so unknowingly and intentionally. But now that I realize I wasn't eligible at the time, I have to.
And it is proven to be a detriment, because when I did, and they used it in manners that I didn't know of, that caused me loss of what they call income, what I call property, that should have rightfully remained mine, things like this. There's certainly an equitable foundation for it.
To repent. The institution does not have uncontroverted evidence that I did so. They can't prove that I did so intentionally by knowing this stuff and was therefore going to defraud their entire system for 33 fucking years and then spend 6 years trying to figure it all out myself. They can't prove that, folks. It's because I sought a higher education outside of their education system. A student, that's what showed me that I'm not eligible to register in that system. It's a military system, and I'm a peaceful inhabitant in this world, a stranger and sojourner with him on a spiritual journey as a living soul in the embodiment of a man in image and likeness of Jesus Christ in Eucharist. A student who is required to register with the selective service and has been denied the Title IV and higher education program assistance because he has not proven to the institution that he has registered with Selective Service may seek a hearing from the secretary by filing a request in writing with the secretary. So now we find we're dealing with the secretary of the Social Security Administration as far as the administrative law judges and the secretary of the Selective Service.
And when we're dealing with these secretaries, we're not dealing with the secretary themselves, but rather the record. The secretary is the one that records the minutes of the meeting and therefore has the access to the minutes of the meetings, which is the record.
Okay. A statement that he is in compliance with registration requirements. So my statement would be that I went outside or entered into the bounds of registration requirements unknowingly and unintentionally, which caused harm not only to myself, but to my family, my children, my companion, my biological brothers and sisters, the parents that adopted me. They call me a lunatic. It's definitely caused damage, not to myself, but to them. A concise statement of the reasons why he has not been able to prove that he is in compliance with those requirements, and copies of all material that he has already supplied to the institution to verify his compliance. People, you keep trying to enter documents proving your compliance or their non-compliance. You're entering documents into the record, and that's not the way it's done.
Concise statement, child of God.
You issue a concise statement of the reasons why you cannot be. I urge you to come out of her. And though we can't supply copies of all material that I've already supplied to the institution, I can pull forth their record that would have anything and show that it's not consistent. Therefore, it must be retracted. Must. It will prove that they've been stealing from private people. The record will prove theft by conversion from private people that were not in the military. And this is the only people it applies to. It's a military health system, like I've been saying. It's all an insurance scheme that then says you have to educate your children so they can operate in commerce and get a job. That job is a fucking military position. Secretary provides an opportunity for a hearing to a student who asserts that he is in compliance with registration requirements and files a written request for a hearing in accordance with paragraph F1, right here, of this section within the award year for which he was denied Title IV Health and Higher Education Program assistance, or within 30 days following the end of the payment period, whichever is later. It says within the award year. So you can't go back and get awards from prior years, but I could certainly write a written request now for last year if I'd applied and was denied, which I was. I went to go get a set of eyeglasses and I was denied because of the mask. By a Walmart employee at that. For a doctor who took an oath to the United States under God for good faith, in full faith and credit. And then I can only presume that he possibly took a Hippocratic oath in his doctorates. An official designed or designated, not appointed, not assigned, but designated by the Secretary, shall conduct any hearing held under paragraph F2 of this section. An official designated by the Secretary. So now we don't have to deal with the Secretary of Selective Service. We can go right back to the Secretary of Social Security Administration again, because that's who the administrative law judges deal with. Conduct on any hearing held under paragraph 2. This hearing, the sole purpose of this hearing is the.
And I've come to realize since this, I found another code, 31 CFR 1602.4. Area office selective service is responsible for all operations and administrations by the board or boards within its jurisdiction.
The determination of compliance with registration requirements, which are judicial requirements. Again, post-secondary. The post office is one that regulates the judiciary. Postal Regulatory Commission. They're the ones that administrate all the administrative law judges, and they do that through the judicial discretions, which are accounted for through the Social Security Administration at the state level. That's why that's the judicial record, and the courts hold the criminal record, where they keep the index. Which is the fingerprint index and the interstate identification index. FBI record, investigations record. They investigate the record.
Oops, my apologies. I was muted again. I'm not the greatest at this, but I was mentioning the judicial element at the enumeration at birth, since it was speaking about the judicial stuff there. The judicial office department, again, independent and neutral forum within the United States Postal Service, comprising of the judicial officer, the administrative law judge, and the Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals. Now, these are public servants performing in a public trust. What they did was they enumerated a legal name as another trustee. A legal name is not for a benefactor. Benefactor doesn't need a legal name to receive something. That's the whole problem with the bench warrant. I got to go down and talk to her again tomorrow and let her know that she evidently didn't understand I'm not qualified to receive commercial instruments, and that when she dismissed the bond and then discussed sending another summons for jury duty, and I agreed to that, that was fine. But what she did do was she didn't post the dismissal of the bond and then turned around and instead posted a continuance. Now that's a presumption that, or an implication that she's assuming personal jurisdiction, which is never had. There was no service, there was no waiver, there was no voluntary appearance by the defendant, and I wasn't in any capacity, like I said, other than a witness, and to presume otherwise would be somebody else's fault.
At this hearing, the student retains the burden of proving compliance by credible evidence with the requirements of the Military Selective Service Act. The designated official shall not consider challenges based on constitutional or other grounds to the requirements that a student state and verify, if required, compliance with registration requirements or to those registration requirements themselves.
So we're talking about the credit again, the credence, and that's the merit system. That's what the military operates on, as a merits and demerits system. Merits literally means spiritual credit. I'm sorry, I'm disqualified from selective service. I cannot invest my spiritual credit in war.
Oh, that pretty much says that you're not supposed to use their record against them, so you don't. Jeremiah 1 verse 5.
Greetings, Brother Charles. I see your note there. I'm in Blackhawk County also, brother. Cedar Falls, right by you and I. The link is there if you want to come up on panel real quick. Feel free to talk, and then maybe we can talk after the show even, or the broadcast, the stream. And in the meantime, I'm going to pull up my email so I can drop that for you. And then, of course, back to the selective service again, that credence. It's so important, because if you're going to fall victim to a nation's armor, you might fall victim to Goliath. Whereas if you learn how to shed off that national armor, put on the full armor of God and the faith in his credence, you might get somewhere. So there's my email for anybody who wants to contact. Feel free, Brother Charles. And then there's a StreamYard link for anybody who wants to come up. I see Russ is down there. Jay Phillips, greetings. Special K, 2MW. Appreciate everybody. Jack off Jack. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And we're going to get back into it. We've got a few more minutes left here. And then the panel is open for discussion if anybody wants to join me.
I formed thee in the belly before I knew thee. Before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee. I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. And by the record itself, it is only nations that pose to have militaries. I know of no family, mom, dad, and their heirs that pose to have militaries.
The reason I say that,
venue.
the reason I say that is it's the domestic tranquility and general welfare of the nation's people that they're supposed to uphold. So the last thing you would expect is that they would be holding families up to military code. Period. And I assure you that's what it all is. It's all martial law. Chiefly affects the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes for the invading forces or the expelled government, for its army, its uses, its safety, and the safety of its operations.
Is strictly commercial, and commercial venues are strictly military. Any determination of compliance made under this section is final unless reopened by the Secretary and revised on the basis of additional evidence. Additional evidence to the record, not in, on, and for the record. A distinct difference. This is the written determination that you make yourself, just like in 26 U.S.C. 6201, the determination of the taxpayer shall be assessed by the Secretary. The assessment isn't done until somebody makes a determination. They have nothing to assess until you determine to enter something into the record.
If they have zeros across the board, they don't even know you're there. It's not until you start giving them information with the name and address saying that you're operating as a contract officer under that real estate investment trust and are taking upon the insurance underwriting risk that they will then assess the tax. That's the presumption.
In, on, and for the record. Then they assess that. Now, the Secretary shall determine, it's no longer an assessment, any determination of compliance made under this section is final. So I'm giving the determination, and it's final. And that whole record that they pose against me proves to be summary. So all I have to do is pose that I've posted my declaratory judgment for 2 years now.
When you go to Customs and Border to cross a border, they ask you, do you have anything to declare?
On my worldwide website, privately, I have issued a notice internationally. Just did so yesterday morning. Early morning. Pentagon got its notice. And hopefully it went up and down the line, despite how many notices I shotgunned out. I want the world to notice that I've made a determination. I declared it. The court gave its summary judgment. I made my determination based on that summary judgment. And again, like I said, declared it. And now when nobody rebuts it, it becomes a final judgment. And then all I have to do is issue notice to the Secretary that final judgment has been determined. Compliance of this under this section is final unless reopened by the Secretary. Now, unless it's reopened by the Secretary, and the Secretary can base that and revise it on additional evidence as opposed to what I've posted, then please do so. You would have to prove that I'm party of that military offense of a nation.
I did it again. I did it again. This goes to the enumeration at birth in the departmental regulations, not just to the secretary, but to everyone up and down the line under 5 USC 301 departmental regulations as it applies to the minimum birth registration requirements, the Plain Writing Act, and it's applicable to the Department of Defense. So you would have to show where the applicability comes from in plain writing that would validate the enumeration at birth in a military venue, in a military capacity. In the United States, under 5 U.S. Code 301, that's creating a United States citizen. Yet the United States has no birth registry. Therefore, you cannot possibly be born in the United States, and there is no evidence that anyone ever has been, and this is a blatant impossibility.
Under the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, which indentures the Treaty of Berne, protecting literary and artistic works, and the law of nations, otherwise known as the principles of the laws of nature. Naturally, any determination of compliance made under this section is binding only for the purposes of determining eligibility for Title IV higher education program assistance.
For determining eligibility, never for enforcement. Again, Social Security Act, as it relates to children, those enumerated at birth during a spell of illness, known as inpatient hospital services, that enumeration at birth creates a legal name only. And the enforcement is in the collection of the public revenue and taxes, and is not to be held against the beneficiary or the benefactor in party. Those people aren't supposed to be touching those children. Those people aren't supposed to be taking and destroying families. If they can't reconcile their commercial record, then maybe they ought to start firing some of those fucking idiots. I don't know who in the hell thinks it's okay to take somebody else's fucking child.
Guess where they get their authority, folks? 20 of the U.S. Code. That's employee benefits. Selective service under education, and they get their authority from employee benefits and national security. Reception and arrangement of specimens and objects of art.
What's a specimen? Why would they use specimen under employee benefits? Reception and arrangement of specimens and objects of art. Why are specimens and objects of art a benefit? Those are those national treasures. The specimens are the national people that create those national treasures. Reception and arrangement is the import and classification. Again, there are variances for categorical predetermination standards that are fundamentally different in nature. This specimen does not fit. This specimen is not fit for service. He objects.
My. Is that birth registration or reception and arrangement of specimens and objects of art? Are they trying to protect their literary work that is false? Are they claiming a literary work based on information abstracted from a specimen?
Copyright, trademark, trade name, patent material, IDs, all kinds of things. And you're allowing them to use your data elements, all kinds of forms of them. That's what they're operating. Quit giving them your data elements, and they can't use that against you. See, it's a copyright issue. The law is copyright, image and likeness. Now, if you want to be an image and likeness of a person, you're going to get used up. Learn how to be an image and likeness of a living soul known as a spiritual being. You have a man that can present a person. That's the trilogy. The spirit, the man, and the person. Put them in order.
And then artistically drawn in another form. And objects of natural history. I hope you guys are paying attention. Natural history. Like I said, law of nations, which would be national history, and would be subjects of national history, as opposed to all objects of natural history. And I hope you learn naturally how to teach your little ones their natural observances so that they can object to the National Selective Service appropriately and righteously.
And see, I'm not saying that you're not supposed to be nice people. I'm not saying that you're not supposed to be charitable. I'm saying again that you find a different way to do it without third-party intervenence or anything like that. There are many ways to operate in this life that you don't have to take upon somebody else enforcing things. You can enforce things yourself. And if you find a greater way to do things, in my experience, people allow you to enforce those greater things, those things that are for a good reason. They seem to agree with the goodness. So anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed that review of the selective service, and how that social security number and that legal name permeate every aspect in your life. And that is the issue. It is an enumeration at birth that placates many inconsistencies and impossibilities. We have to start learning these so we can start putting them forth and making sure that they're part of your choice, and that you let others know that that's part of their choice too. You feed a man for a day if you give him a fish. You feed him for a lifetime if you teach him how to fish. But the true lesson is that if he turns around and teaches others. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Therefore, that's the true benefit. And I want to let everybody know I appreciate your support again. Charles, that's what I'm working on. Just had a bench warrant dismissed for failure to appear for jury duty. But in the dismissal, she didn't put it on the docket. She didn't post it to the docket, but instead posted the next docket piece that she entered, which was continuance, but the record shows that there's no charges, no long title, no bond was found, no finances. And then when she set the bond for $350, and then I showed up, it's been over a year and a half. And I finally showed up and told her, hey, I'm not qualified. So she went ahead and dismissed it. And we agreed that she would send me another jury summons through the mail. And I gave her a care of address. So that was a thing to try to test her. Well, now I got to go back down because she put continuance on there and do some further splaining to Lucy. So we're going to see what happens. But in the meantime, like I said, it's a matter of doing what you're supposed to do. And when things are, well, again, it's scriptural. You're not supposed to be bearing false witness on your brother. And that record certainly bears false witness. Because I didn't go in there as a defendant. I told her I wasn't qualified. Therefore, would placate that I'm not a defendant either. Well, then she agreed, oh, okay, well, we'll dismiss the bond and we'll issue another summons so you have the opportunity to answer the question to see if you're qualified. Yeah, questions to see if you're qualified, knowing that I'm objecting that I'm qualified. So we've got to go in and deal with that again and see if she knows how to read. So in the meantime, I want everybody, again, appreciate your support. Know that I love you. I don't give a fuck whether you love me back or not. May God bless you and have a good night. We'll see you again next time. Bye.